Danny Gathone, for pro boxing fans, delighted to be joined via Zoom by former three-weight world champion and current top pundit Duke McKenzie. Duke, you're sporting the Arsenal gear. A happy man this Wednesday, I imagine.
Listen, I told you before, mate. I like Arsenal. I consider myself a supporter, not a fan. I support them because I like Mikel Arteta. I like everything he stands for. I think the team are great. And don't get me wrong, if they lose, it doesn't spoil my weekend. Do you know what I mean? I just sort of crack on. But they're doing great things at the minute. The result last night has to be one of the greatest results in Arsenal's history since they've been kicking that ball around, you know? And Declan Rice, who's he's England captain, mate, all day long. He's different gravy. What he did last night, you know, it wasn't a fluke. They practiced that stuff in training, so it paid off for him.
Yeah, something special. Absolutely. Talk a bit of boxing here, Duke, because I'm a United fan, and if we wax lyrical about Arsenal for too long, it's going to put me in a bad mood. Just your thoughts, first of all, on the Queensberry show at the weekend. Heavy impact. We'll talk about the two top of the bill heavyweight fights, starting with Joe Joyce. Decision loss to Filip Hrgovic. I think two of the judges had it relatively wide, one judge a bit closer. What was your read on the fight? I think the general consensus is the right man won.
Oh, obviously, you know, the right man won. Hrgovic ain't great, but neither's Joe Joyce, unfortunately. And, you know, a lot of people are saying Joe Joyce should retire from the sport of boxing. The only reason I want to see that guy retire from the sport of boxing is because I don't want to see him get hurt. I don't want to see him taking punches like he takes. He's losing more now than he's winning. Boxing's a very unforgivable business. It's not a sport, it's a business. It's a very cutthroat business. And I recently listened to a comment Frank Warren had made on Joe Joyce, in as much as saying, you know, if he's going to continue in boxing, then there's a lot of young, hungry lions that are waiting for his scalp. There's a lot of young, hungry lions waiting for the right time now to fight a Joe Joyce. And would you put him anywhere near Moses Atuma? You know, you wouldn't put him anywhere near Fabio Wardley. You know, these guys will do some serious damage. And like I say, Joe Joyce, you've only got his best interest at heart. I hope he listens to the general sort of consensus. I don't think he will, but I hope he listens to the general sort of opinion and does the right thing by himself. Because you know what? All these hard fights that he keeps having, he might be fine now, but it's in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, when all those hard fights come back to get you, because they do, you know, people aren't going to put their hand in their pocket and say, oh, mate, we're going to get you the best medical treatment, you know, or we're going to do this for you, we're going to do that for you. They're not. And he's going to be on his own, and it's a horrible place to be. So he's probably made a nice few quid. He should get out with whatever faculties he has left and whatever money he has left and do something else.
Yeah, I think obviously ultimately it's a decision only he can make, but I think the voices that do, like yourself, like a lot of people in the sport, comes from definitely a place of compassion, because there's so many cases, as you alluded to, where you see fighters 15, 20 years after they retire, and yeah, obviously the effects of their career is visible. Just on that card, we saw David Adelaide get a KO victory over Jamie TKV for the British heavyweight title, and in what was a very controversial ending. The footage appeared to show the referee shout break twice, slap the arm of Jamie TKV down, at which point David Adelaide was able to, without stepping back, you know, without removing himself from the clinch, land a massive left hook that ultimately, after another knockdown, brought the fight to the end. Just what was your reading that situation? Duke, obviously boxer are appealing the decision with the British Boxing Board of Control. Ben Shalom said he wants the fight to be ruled a no contest, an immediate rematch order. Do you agree with Ben?
No, I don't agree. I mean, listen, ultimately you're supposed to protect yourselves at all times. The fact remains is it probably was bad refereeing from start to finish. The referee never really got a hold of that fight. However, even when you slap the other guy's hands away, doesn't mean you're supposed to drop your hands and, you know, not protect yourselves. If TKV or whatever he calls himself isn't protecting himself and end up getting knocked out, who's to blame? You know, as a boxer, you're taught to defend yourselves at all times. And I've always been taught the minute you break from your opponent, you get your hands up and your chin down. So as far as I can see, that guy's only got himself to blame, but they'll run it back. I'm sure they'll have an immediate return. I don't really see what all the controversy is about, and I really think that David Adelaide will do the same again in the return fight. He's a much improved young boxer, and he's very much on the ascendancy.
Yeah, well, we look forward to hearing whatever resolution British Boxing Board of Control come to, but I think regardless, a rematch probably will happen. It seems like the logical step for both. Just looking ahead, Duke, and away from the heavyweight division, we've got a big rematch coming up in Ben Whitaker and Liam Cameron next week. Now, there's a massive narrative around this fight. The first meeting between the pair certainly went different to most people envisaged, ending in that controversial technical draw after Ben Whitaker and Liam Cameron fell out of the ring. Ben Whitaker claimed injury. A lot of people are sceptical. Are you looking forward to the rematch next week, first of all?
I am looking forward to the rematch. You see, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think Ben Whitaker's got anything to prove to the general public. He's only got to prove it to himself. You know, there's been a lot of hype around him and just how good he is. He's looked nothing but sensational going into this last fight. So I would expect him to have gone right back to the drawing board. I think he's got a new coach now, they tell me.
Yep.
So he would have gone back to the drawing board. And I expect him to put wasn't wrong. You know, I think he would have won that fight had it have gone the distance. I'm not saying he wasn't in trouble. I'm not saying he wasn't hurt. And he wouldn't have had to have dug deep, because he would have. But the fact remains, he's got to prove it to himself now. He's got to live up to the hype. He's got to live up to his name. You know, there's a lot's been expected of him. And he has to go out and do a job on Cameron. And I think he will, because, you know, class is permanent, form's temporary. And I just think his overall class is too much for that kid. Or it ought to be. But, you know, we're going to find out.
So do you think it's just sort of minor adjustments he needs to make in order to have the rematch go the way most people thought the first meeting would go, in a sort of comfortable win?
Oh, sure. Listen, he doesn't have to adjust anything as far as I can see. You know, listen, what happened to him falling out of the ring, going backwards, could happen to anybody. It can knock the wind out of your sails. And, you know, let's get it right. He didn't continue. So if he's on form, I would expect him to be going and do a number on Cameron. I don't think he'll go in showboating this time, because that's not really going to do himself any favours. I think he goes in with a much more serious attitude, and he'll go in and like I say, do a number.
Yeah, well, we look forward to that one as well. Some big news the other night, Duke. Dmitry Bivol vacating his WBC World Light Heavyweight title. First bids for a fight between himself and David Benavidez were due to take place the following morning. Sort of Eddie Hearn had alluded to it in previous interviews that was very likely, and that it was at the request of Turki Al-Sheikh and the opportunities he gave Dmitry Bivol that they're going to stick by him and stick by their word to Artur Beterbiev and pursue a trilogy with him. What's your thoughts on that situation? I don't think any boxing fan's going to complain about seeing Bivol and Beterbiev run it back a third time. However, there is a view that, you know, David Benavidez has earned a shot. What's your take on all of that?
Well, the Benavidez fight is just as hard as Beterbiev, in my opinion. You know, big puncher, good boxer, young, hungry. So, as far as I can see, from Bivol's point of view, it's a good business move that you vacate, because if he can vacate and then walk obviously straight into the Beterbiev rematch, it's a smart move for him. That fight's going to be just as hard. So, you know, I'd rather fight a guy that I've already beaten, or a guy that I know I can beat, because I think Bivol beats Beterbiev again. And, you know, it's not going to be easy. You know, none of the fights they've had have been easy fights, but he's proven just how classy he is by able to raise his game against a world-class wrecking machine. So Benavidez is a big puncher. It's a dangerous fight. You know, so there's no soft touches. There's no easy fights in that weight division for any of the top boys. And like I say, I think that's probably purely a good business move in terms of financial gain, that he vacates the WBC title and goes through with the rematch, which is just going to be, I can't wait for that one. I really can't. I think it's going to be another excellent spectacle to see.
Yes, certainly if the first two are anything to go by. There's been talk on social media that it could be David Benavidez versus Callum Smith for that WBC light heavyweight title. Obviously, Benavidez has been elevated, but they have to make a defence, and Callum's coming off a very good win against Joshua Buatsi when there were sort of question marks over what he had left. How do you think that one would play out?
Well, I mean, Smith would have earned the right to challenge for another world title, but Benavidez is a good champion, a solid champion, a hard-hitting champion with a point to prove. We're talking about levels. So is Joshua Buatsi as good as Benavidez on paper? I don't think so. You would firmly expect Benavidez to comfortably deal with Smith, take nothing away from Smith, because he showed in his last fight, yeah, he does still have a role to play on the world scene. And of course, he deserves another world title fight because of the accolades which he's already achieved. But that would probably be shock of the year if he was to walk away and beat Benavidez and come away as world champion.
Yeah, interesting times in the light heavyweight division, definitely. Just a few on the heavyweights, and I'll let you get on with your Wednesday. Saw the launch press conference for Fabio Wardley versus Jarrell Miller, Portman Road. Got a bit out of hand. And just before we talk about the antics or whatever, what are your thoughts on the fight, in the sense that I saw comments from a fellow TalkSport man, Adam Catterall, and even though the field drug test for Jarrell Miller ahead of the Anthony Joshua fight was a while ago, Jarrell didn't make any excuses. He admitted he was using performance-enhancing drugs, and with that in mind, the fact that he's getting these big opportunities, Adam was saying, doesn't really sit right with him. Do you understand that viewpoint?
I think he's a disgrace to the sport of boxing, and I think anybody that's like him, that's been caught using any kind of performance enhancing drug, is a disgrace to the sport of boxing. I don't know how or why he's got this shot. Don't think he deserves it. Hasn't beaten anybody of any note. Loses all of the big fights. I sincerely expect Fabio Wardley to go out there and smash him to pieces. I do. Fabio Wardley is the who needs him. He's on the who needs him, who wants him radar in the heavyweight division. He's like a hidden jewel as far as I'm concerned, and he ticks just about every box in that weight division right now. For me, certainly, I think Fabio Wardley, like I say, he'll smash Miller to pieces because Miller can't fight, and that's a fact. And once he's dealt with him, then there are much bigger fights for him to secure, to cement his place as being certainly one of the best heavyweights in the world.
Yeah, well, it's rightly or wrongly in terms of should the fight be happening, should Miller get the opportunity. It's a massive night for Fabio Wardley, of course. That is from the football club in Ipswich. So, yeah, big spectacle. Hopefully, I'll be there. Heavyweights at the top end, it has gone a bit quiet. We're waiting for news of Daniel Dubois' next move. Now, the rumblings around boxing are that it's going to be this rematch with Oleksandr Usyk. Obviously, that's probably the biggest fight in the division that doesn't involve Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua. But a lot of people think that's maybe a bit harsh. And Joseph Parker, of course, was scheduled to fight Dubois. Dubois pulled out with illness a few days before. Parker was willing to step in with Martin McCauley, the boogeyman in the division, and he's not had that fight rescheduled, and he's still waiting on a world title shot after being on, just an incredible run over the past couple of years. Do you understand that point of view, that it's harsh on Parker?
It is harsh on Parker. But again, it's a business decision, not a boxing decision. If Parker was a bigger draw, then they would lean towards fighting Parker. But he's not. He's not a bigger draw than Daniel Dubois, and he's certainly not a bigger draw than Oleksandr Usyk. So, Usyk v Dubois is the most natural fight to make in the heavyweight division because they're both belt holders, and Usyk wants to be undisputed again in a different weight division. And I'm sure that's the fight that we made because it's been, everybody's been talking about it for quite a number of months now. Unfortunately for Dubois, he had to pull out against Parker. Nobody's fault. Medical grounds, they tell me, proven medical grounds. And the boxer's health has to be paramount. So he pulls out of that one and then obviously walks into the Usyk fight, which is on paper and in reality the best heavyweight fight on the planet between the two best heavyweights that walk on the planet right now. And that's what you want to see. the best fighting the best, and that's what we're getting.
Yeah, it would be a massive rematch for sure. And is it one that you think has got closer as time's gone past and Daniel's improved and got his confidence? And Usyk, obviously, he's not getting any younger. You think Daniel is alive in that fight? Should it be next?
He should be next. Yeah, definitely, 100% should be next. The question has to be: is, can he win it? He's got a puncher's chance of beating Usyk, but the question also has to be asked: does Alexander Usyk get knocked down? Does Alexander Usyk get cut? And when have you seen him struggle in a fight? You haven't. Also, a lot's made of, Usyk's had some hard fights now, and some people are saying, well, he's looking old and one thing or another. I don't see it like that. I don't see him looking old. I don't see him looking jaded. I don't see him looking nothing else but quite brilliant. He has the ability to adapt to any style. Doesn't matter if it's a puncher, doesn't matter if it's a boxer. He can adapt to any style, and he will be one of the rare few boxers that retire from the sport undefeated and with a bank balance as big as you can imagine.
Yeah, certainly a bank balance I wouldn't mind being a pound or two behind. A name that has come into the picture, the question marks around Daniel Dubois' next fight, is Derek Chisora. He's been made mandatory by the IBF. Now, I've seen various people get asked about a potential fight between Daniel Dubois and Derek Chisora, and the reaction is always a bit like, I don't want to see that for Derek. Is that the right fight for Derek Chisora, since his last fight at this stage of his career?
Well, for Derek Chisora, it would be quite romantic if he could get a world title fight and, win a world title fight. But the reality is, it's not going to happen. Not against Daniel Dubois. Also, I've seen Daniel Dubois' coach saying, so his manager saying, that they don't particularly want to see that fight. It could be so one-sided and brutally painful. And again, Derek Chisora, you would love to see this guy come out of the sport. He's made a lot of money. The big ones always eluded him in terms of the world title. He may get lucky, but it's highly unlikely because, when you look at Usyk and when you look at Dubois, those two are in a league of their own. I mean, particularly Usyk, he's in a league of his own. Then you got Dubois and everybody else. I wouldn't want to see Derek Chisora fight Dubois because again, it would be painfully one-sided. And again, you've got to look at this guy and where he's going to be in 5, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. He's had more hard fights than you care to remember, than I care to remember. And at some point, it's going to come back to get him. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he rides up into the sunset with a bucket load of cash, lives his life, and just does what he does. Let's hope that is the case. But he's had so many wars, and he gets hit so cleanly. And how the IBF have made him their mandatory, I'm not sure. Take away that fact, though, probably nobody deserves a world title fight more than Derek Chisora, given his popularity. He's such a popular guy. The public love him, which is incredible, because he does leave everything on the line when he fights, win, lose or draw. And he keeps talking about he wants to entertain the crowd and one thing and another. But sadly, when the lights go down and everybody's gone in the years to come, all these hard fights are going to come back to haunt him.
Derek's been, you say, given the British public some great nights, and you would hate to see him take that one fight that does leave lasting impact. Duke, I really appreciate you giving me so much of your time. I've taken up plenty of it. I'll let you get on with your Wednesday. Really enjoyed that. Really good speaking to you, and hopefully we can do it again soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Danny.